And as we're coming out of winter, looking forward to spring and summer and all of those good things, and perhaps also leaving behind us some of the economic woes that have plagued our bleak midwinter. I'm not sure this optimism has made it all its way down to Parliament, but we're catching up with the things that have been happening in our government headquarters. Dr. Bryce Edwards joining us. Kia ora, good morning.
Maureen, Andrew. No, things are still a bit dire down in the capital. Weather-wise, it has improved. It's sunny down here today, but no, there's still lots of conflict and accusations and fighting going on down
Exactly.
here.
And hey, given some of the weather you've had this week, there's a long way to improve, and that I think is also the case in the halls of Parliament. Wanting to kick off, though, with not central government, but local government, the local government conference, and some fighting words from Christopher Luxon.
Yes, I mean, I found it quite refreshing because here you had quite a hostile audience, the local government authorities, mayors, officials, all coming together for their annual conference. And they're already quite sort of suspicious and unhappy about the new government for many reasons.
Yeah.
And then the Prime Minister comes along and gives a very hostile speech. And so this was very political. And I found it quite refreshing because in recent years, most prime ministers go along to most events, whether it's been John Key or Jacinda Ardern, and it's kind of smile and wave.
Yeah.
And they make nice and they try to get on and they give lots of sort of, they try to be friends. Whereas Luxon wasn't doing that. He laid down the law. He said that local governments are going to have to tighten their belt, that central government was going to expect and make sure that local authorities aren't putting up rates again and again by the sort of amounts they've seen this year. And I think he was quite serious about it, and he's got some reforms coming. And so this was terribly, badly received by the mayors, councillors, officials, and they made that very clear to him. But of course, Luxon, as Prime Minister, didn't care really what their reaction was. He was speaking to New Zealand, knowing that this was going to be on the news at 6:00. And I think he would have been quite confident that the majority of voters would appreciate his message, because he was telling them to let's get back to basics, stop spending or wasting money on some of these kind of additional things that
the nice to haves, he called
the nice to haves.
Yeah,
let's get back to fixing the pipes.
Yeah, now basically, and I'm sure that could go down well in Wellington as well, with some of the pipe issues that you have in that part of the country. On that topic, though, it was kind of like, well, hey, don't look at us. We're broker than you are, and we've got even bigger infrastructure programs that we're wanting to pay for. The cupboard is bare. I suppose one gift that he did give local governments is they can just blame central government for their economic woes and the rates going up for the next 3 years at least.
Look, I don't know. I mean, you're right in the sense that there's a lot of infrastructure that needs to be done, and there's been some critics saying, well, the central government's going to need local government to carry out a lot of this reform, especially in terms of water.
Yep.
Wouldn't it be better if if Luxon was playing more nice and trying to be friends? Because it's certainly true that there's going to be a lot of infrastructure deals, and there's some agreements that central government are trying to sign up local councils for.
Yep.
But no, I think he did the right thing in terms of just being quite honest and saying that central government isn't going to pay for everything. So I think we are going to see a lot of fights between local government and central government over the next couple of years. In fact, it's quite interesting with this change of government. I sort of wondered which kind of institutions are going to be the resistance, if you like, or the holding firm against the new government. And initially it was the public service and maybe academia and unions, maybe even the media to some extent. But I think they were all on the back foot, whereas local government I think they're a bit more willing to push back against central government and say, well, as we saw with Wayne Brown actually a few months ago,
Yeah.
there was a big headline on the paper, "This isn't your city, it's mine," sort of thing. So I
Yeah.
think that approach is going to happen.
Yeah, a little bit of bashing heads on that one. And speaking of, I suppose, big infrastructure projects, particularly perhaps those happening in the regions, changes to the, deeply unpopular fast track bill. Do you think those that were unhappy with the first incarnation will be happy with the tweaks?
Yeah, I mean, just to maybe disagree or correct you on that, I'm not sure it's deeply unpopular. It's certainly deeply unpopular with a fair chunk of society.
Yeah.
And so we've seen some polls showing a third to maybe 40% of people don't support it. But there's a lot of support for the fast track bill.
Okay.
And I think the government at times have done quite a good job of selling it, really saying, well, look, we need to get things done. The last government didn't get enough things done. So this is going to be a way of getting development underway, getting rid of the red tape. But of course, there's been a lot of suspicion that this might involve too many shortcuts, and the most kind of powerful vested interests, the lobbyists, the political donors, are going to be the ones that get their things done.
Yeah.
And so one of the big criticisms was that of the fast track bill was that there was going to be these three ministers, Shane Jones, Simeon Brown, and Chris Bishop, that were going to get to decide, have the final decision on all of these applications. And we heard from Chris Bishop on Sunday saying that they've listened to the criticisms and they're going to take away the final decision making from the ministers and put it back to the expert panel, so the officials that are actually looking at these applications.
Well, I mean, a significant change perhaps in that regard, but perhaps also an example of central government saying, you know what, we don't want to be held up with local government's planning permission to get these things done. Again, a little bit of fighting talk between Wellington and the regions.
Yeah, I think that's right. And of course, whenever there's developments, there's going to be people who want to hold it up and make sure proper process is being done. And so I think it's right with local government to want to make sure that these things are built. We don't want any, big white elephants or, wasted projects. So, yeah, this is one of those debates between sort of doing what's right and doing something fast.
Fix the pipes, don't worry about the nice to haves, to quote Christopher Luxon in that regard.
Yeah, I guess so.
Something interesting happening in the House, and been following this one. It's like the argument that won't go away. Casey Costello's. There's been some pretty clear accusations that Casey Costello has been influenced by big tobacco, the tobacco lobby, and some of the smoke-free reforms that are being pushed through at the moment. Aisha Verrill, like a dog with a bone, she's not giving up on this one, and it's led to a little bit of argy-bargy in the House, perhaps.
Yeah, look, asking some tough questions in Parliament, but I think that's right and proper. That's what oppositions are supposed to do. Now, you have to remember that this government came to power, and one of their more surprising big changes has been on smoke-free legislation, rolling back some of the former Labour government's reforms on that. Casey Costello has halved some of the taxes on vapes. And so, there's a lot of people saying, well, where's all this come from? We didn't really know this was going to happen. And so some people have been digging around and seemingly come up with some smoking guns, so to speak. Showing documents from various lobbyists from the tobacco companies, supposedly, that have been informing these decisions. And so, there's a lot of sort of backwards and forwards between the government and their opponents about, exactly who said what when, and is the government just doing the bidding of the tobacco companies? I mean, I personally think that Casey Costello has been quite sort of unusual, shall we say, or a bit weird in the way that she's dealt with this portfolio. And so, I do think that this is one to watch, and she may make some more mistakes, and just my prediction that she might be one of the ones not to last until the end of this parliamentary term as a minister.
I suppose if it comes down to it, if she's got a few things wrong, that's forgivable. If she's shown to be in the back pocket of tobacco lobby, that's career ending. What do you think the fallout will be if there's proven to be a causal link between tobacco company lobbying and the policy put forward by New Zealand First by Casey Costello?
Look, I do think New Zealanders would be unimpressed with that. At the moment, it's more speculation, drawing some lines between dots. I mean, they're quite solid lines, I would say, but they're still just lines. So yes, I don't think it will go down well. And I don't believe that National and ACT are particularly keen on some of these reforms. It really is being driven by New Zealand First. They brought it into their coalition negotiations and have made this happen. But of course, Luxon isn't going to want to go up against Winston Peters and sack one of his ministers. There's always that tension.
Is there I think it's interesting that Casey Costello is carrying the can for this one rather than some of the more senior experienced politicians from New Zealand First. Is that part of the problem, or does that just make it look a little bit more suspicious, Bryce?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not quite sure how to answer that, but certainly Casey Costello, has been around politics for a long time. She is new into Parliament, and it was surprising that she went straight in to be a cabinet minister. And maybe some of that inexperience is showing. And of course, people are drawing attention to the fact that she used to be the chair of the Taxpayers Union, which at times have been funded by tobacco and seem to be around some of the tobacco companies. So maybe some of those things are coming back to haunt her.
Well, hey, appreciate your comments and insight as always, Bryce. Thanks for joining us.
No trouble. Thanks, Andrew.
Hey, thanks very much for joining us in the Rhema studio. Thanks very much for watching the interview. It's kind of nice to have an audience, actually. And if you did like what you watched, then do give us a like, do give us the thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more interviews like that one, or perhaps even better, subscribe and those interviews will come straight to you. Don't forget to turn on your notifications, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.